The subcommittee will come to order. We meet pursuant to notice to mark up 2 bipartisan resolutions. As your offices were previously notified, it is the intent of the chair to consider the following items en bloc, which members have before them. House Resolution 277, honoring the Tunisian people for their democratic transition. A Ros-Lehtinen amendment in the nature of a substitute to House Resolution 277, which was provided to your offices yesterday. House Resolution 293, expressing concern over anti-Israel and anti-Semitic incitement within the Palestinian Authority, and the Ros-Lehtinen amendment in nature of a substitute to H.Res. 293, which was also provided to your offices yesterday. Without objection, these items are considered as read and will be considered en bloc. After the ranking member and I speak on these measures, I will be glad to recognize any other members seeking recognition. Without objection, all members may have 5 days to submit statements for the record on today's business. Nearly 5 years ago, the Tunisian people sparked a wave across the Middle East and North Africa, called, as we know, the Arab Spring, that the world hoped would be the catalyst to end authoritarian rule in the region and usher in a new era of democracy. Today, the people of Tunisia are firmly going down the path toward democracy, as we have seen them reach multiple milestones. We know that elections alone do not make a democracy, and that establishing a new democracy is a long road. But today, I am even more optimistic for Tunisia's democratic prospects. The people of Tunisia have adopted a new constitution, one that makes place for religious and ethnic minorities and women to be equal and help build the new Tunisia. For the first time ever, the Tunisian people democratically elected a new legislature and a president. Now the Tunisian government is moving to consolidate its gains and build on its democratic institutions, ensure the respect for human rights and the rule of law, and implement additional democratic reforms. Of course, there are still so many hurdles to overcome, but it is our hope that with the continued assistance of the United States, we can assure that Tunisia remains on course and becomes the region's first full-fledged democracy and the shining example for the rest of the region to emulate. That is why I'm pleased to support this resolution honoring the people of Tunisia for their continued success on their democratic transition, and I urge all of my colleagues to do the same and send a message to the people of Tunisia that we appreciate and support their efforts. I would also urge my colleagues to support a resolution I have introduced alongside my good friend and ranking member, Mr. Ted Deutsch of Florida, expressing concern over the anti-Israel and anti-Semitic sentiment within the Palestinian Authority. All that is going on now with the clashes in Jerusalem at the Temple Mount between Palestinians throwing rocks at Jews and Israeli security forces, well, tensions are, as we know, on the rise. And one of the major reasons why these terrorists are on the rise, tensions are on the rise, is because rather than being a responsible partner for stability and peace, Abu Mazen and the Palestinian Authority have stoked the anger with government-sponsored incitement. For years, the Palestinian Authority has served to exacerbate the problem through indoctrination in schools, including anti-Israel, anti-Semitic language in textbooks and lesson plans, or by paying salaries to the families of terrorists and naming public schools and squares after these terrorists. We always hear that actions speak louder than words, but the actions and the words from the PA and Abu Mazen both indicate that there's no interest in the current government for peace with Israel. We must do more to hold the PA accountable for its anti-Israel incitement. We must do more to encourage the PA to discontinue its incitement to violence against Israel, and we must work to do more to support and encourage those individuals and organizations working to promote cooperation between Israelis and Palestinians. There will never be peace unless there is some trust and respect, but it can't happen until the Palestinian leadership no longer moves to incite hatred and violence against Israel. And now I'm pleased to yield to the ranking member, Mr. Deutsch, for his remarks.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'll be brief in my comments as I've got to run back and forth to another committee hearing. I want to thank the Chairman for working together to ensure bipartisan support for these 2 resolutions. Chairman Ros-Lehtinen and I introduced House Resolution 293 to highlight the ongoing incitement by officials within the Palestinian Authority in official textbooks and on state television. President Abbas came to power on a platform of nonviolence. He speaks of his desire for peace, but using inflammatory language and failing to speak out against anti-Semitism and incitement simply gives the appearance of condoning it. Violence cannot be condoned, and those truly seeking peace must speak out. Indeed, when there is violence against innocent Palestinians, we must speak out, and I am pleased to see Prime Minister Netanyahu doing so. We know that peace will only come from an agreement between the Israelis and the Palestinians themselves, but conditions on the ground will dictate whether the Palestinian people are prepared for what a Palestinian state living side by side with the Jewish state of Israel ultimately looks like. Textbooks and maps must show Israel's existence. Town squares should never be named after suicide bombers or attackers that glorify terrorism against innocent civilians. This resolution also applauds those Israeli and Palestinian organizations that are working together to promote peace between two peoples, whether it's through the provision of medical services or peer-to-peer interaction, or a Palestinian professor who dares to teach his students of the horrors of the Holocaust. I hope my colleagues will join us in supporting this resolution. Second, I urge members to support House Resolution 277, which recognizes the democratic transition in Tunisia and the importance of the U.S.-Tunisia relationship. It was the self-immolation of a Tunisian fruit vendor that gave way to the Arab Spring. And since 2011, Tunisia has fought to ensure its transition to democracy would be peaceful, and thus far, it's been a model for other nations still struggling for democratic ideals. Tunisia has successfully completed its first free presidential elections and transitioned to a new government. The new constitution includes unprecedented rights for women and minorities and respect for rule of law. Yet Tunisia faces a precarious security threat. Tunisians have gone to train with ISIS in staggering numbers. Its border with Libya is difficult to control, and Libya's lawlessness has made it a magnet for terror training and transit. In a span of mere months, Tunisia suffered a horrific terror attack at the Bardo Museum and another in the popular tourist destination of Sousse. The United States is committed to assisting Tunisia with stabilizing its security, its economy, and its democracy. And this resolution is a reminder of the importance of a successful and thriving Tunisia, and I urge my colleagues to support it.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Deutsch. I'd like to recognize other members for any opening statements they would like to make. Mr. Shabbat of Ohio is recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I want to commend you for bringing this legislation before the subcommittee today. As we know, Israel is one of the United States' closest allies, and over the years, it's withstood anti-Semitic rhetoric from, unfortunately, far too many of its neighbors, often propagated by state institutions and government officials from neighboring states. And unfortunately, one of the worst offenders is right next door, the Palestinian Authority. A monthly educational magazine for children, one that's sponsored by the Palestinian National Committee for Education, depicts Hitler as a role model. This does nothing for the promotion of peace in the region. To the contrary, it encourages hate and violence when acceptance of differences and loving your neighbor should be the key principles of a young person's education. And this perpetuated hatred by the Palestinian Authority and their allies has a direct impact within Israel's own borders. Just this week, a Jewish man was killed by Palestinian stone throwers after the Secretary General of the Palestinian Liberation Organization accused Israel of turning Jerusalem into an exclusively Jewish city. Tell me, how is this rhetoric productive in finding a middle ground? Israel and the Palestinian Authority will never be able to negotiate peace if one party is constantly under attack by one that institutionally encourages anti-Israeli and anti-Semitic beliefs. If we ever hope to see cooperation in the region, we will have to see a change in attitudes first. This measure recognizes those realities and reasserts our support for an Israel that's treated with the dignity and respect that it deserves. It's a timely measure. I urge my colleagues to support H.R. 293, and I yield back, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shabbat. Mr. Cicilline.
Thank you, Chairwoman Ros-Lehtinen and Ranking Member Deutsch, for bringing up these two bills for markup today. I'm proud to be a co-sponsor of both. I'd like to just say a few words about House Res 293, which condemns anti-Semitic sentiment within the Palestinian Authority. Both the Palestinian Authority and the Israeli government have agreed on numerous accords to refrain, quote, from incitement, including hostile propaganda. But it's incredibly concerning that the PA has not eradicated such anti-Semitic and anti-Israel language from their public statements, official materials, and their educational system. As the Middle East faces incredible turmoil and chaos, the perpetuation of anti-Semitism by the Palestinian Authority is more dangerous than ever. Both the Palestinian Authority and Israel are threatened by the current regional destabilization, and fueling the fire with anti-Semitism is outrageous and extremely risky for Jews, for Israel, and ultimately for the entire region. This all happening in the context of dangerously increasing anti-Semitism throughout Europe. To be sure, there are organizations and individuals on both sides working to foster cooperation, mutual understanding, and cultural exchanges between Israelis and Palestinians. And there are Palestinians who reject the hateful and racist language being used by the Palestinian Authority and its supporters. I hope that the United States will continue to support those that are working to bring peace and understanding to the region, and will continue to condemn the Palestinian Authority's actions and statements meant to incite hatred against Jews and against the State of Israel. And I thank you, Madam Chair, and you.
Thank you, Mr. Cicilline. Seeing no other requests for time, are there any amendments? The chair moves to report the en bloc items favorably to the full committee. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The motion is approved, and the measures as amended are reported favorably to the full committee. With thanks to my colleagues for their input and cooperation, that concludes today's markup, and the subcommittee stands adjourned until we gavel in the subcommittee. Subcommittee will come to